Let us just turn to a Conservative figure, because Baroness Nicky Morgan joins us, former Conservative MP herself, and in her time Culture Secretary as well as Education Secretary. Nicky Morgan, just one thought on the campaign before we look to the future of your party. Do you think one of the lessons for the Conservatives is that they should have targeted reform directly early on?
Good morning. I'm not sure it's necessarily a lesson from the campaign. I just think generally, I think those of us, in Westminster, have to tackle reform. And I think perhaps there was some sort of hope that Nigel Farage might be occupied elsewhere around the globe, particularly facing the US election, but clearly not. And I think both for the Conservatives, but also for the now Labour government, how you tackle reform, how you take on their programme, what they say, I think is something we now absolutely cannot ignore.
Who is the leader who could bring your party back from this?
Well, I can't give you a name this morning, to be honest with you. Firstly, I'm still trying to catch up after no sleep on exactly who's been re-elected and who's been elected for the first time. For me, it's got to be somebody who is going to speak to the voters that we have lost, and particularly those voters who have moved either to the Labour Party or to Liberal Democrats. The seat that I held was in the Midlands. I won it off Labour in 2010. We've just lost it tonight back to a Labour candidate. And I know there are voters there who, it's difficult after 14 years. It's difficult to provide a fresh perspective and to say to people, vote for us again. But I know there are voters there that we could do. And the leaders got to think about that. They've got to not be distracted. Things like the culture wars and everything else. Really focusing on the issues that people were talking about on doorsteps, that they were deciding on how they were going to vote. And we're going to hear lots of those, I think, over the course of the next few months.
Well, some of those who are still in the parliamentary party, Suella Braverman, Jeremy Hunt, Mel Stride, not Penny Mordaunt, not Jacob Rees-Mogg, not Liz Truss, obviously Rishi Sunak is still there. I mean, it's going to be, we've already on the programme this morning had two very different prescriptions. One from Tobias Ellwood, which is I think probably more in line with what you're saying, and one from Steve Baker. These are two people who've lost their seats who have very different ideas about what's needed.
Well, and that, you see, is part of the problem, because obviously, and that's what's been fascinating to watch about the Labour Party, and it's what happened to the Conservatives pre-2010, which is actually when a party becomes hungry to be in power, it's amazing how they all pull together, and people might have differences of views or different sort of preferred programmes, policies, but they're prepared to put that aside for the greater goal, obviously, of being re-elected. And frankly, that's what the Conservative Party forgot over the last few years, talking to itself more than to the country. I think you're probably right. I suspect, I didn't hear the interviews, but I suspect I would agree with Tobias more. But also we're now going to have to listen. I'm obviously, as you say, I'm a former Secretary of State. People might not want to listen to me, and we're not going to listen to perhaps those who former MPs. It's the parliamentary party, those who have been elected or re-elected today, last night. Their views on this are going to be very important. They're the ones who had masses and masses of doorstep conversations, will have picked up what people said and what people didn't say, actually. That's always very important too.